Hello everyone, Master Ngon1001 here. In this video I wanted to go over the process of making a hard surface helmet using Boxcutter, HardOps, Blender 2.8, little Decalmachine, as well as using the ad created by Feral 3D to put a graphic on the screen. So if I play that, this is a result of what I'll be creating in this video. I apologize for the amount of time. However, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. On my to-do list of tutorials to do was the helmet. Now that 2.8 is here and Mirror Tools is in 2.8, everything's just set for us to give it a try. So also I did an introduction of Boxcutter, so hopefully that should give everybody a nice foundation to help you keep up with everything that's going to go on. But you know, I'm going to try to get through this. Of course, all the keys are always being displayed, so I shouldn't have to always explain them. So without further ado, we're going to press Q and add a sphere cast, except we'll jump this down to subdiv level 2 with Control 2. I'm going to press Control A and just apply everything with visual transform, and then use Alt X and bisect in this case to just split it down the middle with the mirror mod, but only keep half of it real this time. And with proportional editing mode, let's just play with some shapes here and go for our helmet. Helmets is one of my favorite ways to test Blender. It's like a daily thing for me to just go through and just create a quick piece of headwear. Depending on how good it looks, I'll take it further. You know, to the people asking, you know, why don't I ever, we'll press WW, changes to lasso. To the people wondering why I never do full videos, you know, got 10 hours and I'll go through that. But yeah, it's just a longer process, so I'm always looking for ways to streamline it, and I think I've come up with a few strategies to make it easier and more time effective than the previous methods. Is another thing I spent a lot of time pondering and practicing tutorials. So we look at this from the side, we got a cool look. We look at this from the front, it's like womp womp. So let's use sculpt as our secondary mode. So I'm just gonna press F and then G, and I'm just using a mouse. This is just an alternative to using proportional editing, which I have nothing against proportional editing. And I'll tab into edit mode as my fallback for proportional editing. Sorry, didn't mean to be dishing dirt on proportional editing. You know, the moment I say something, I need it. Right here, this geometry is going to go through a series of states. You know, this exercise that I'm about to show is just an exercise in topological control, fun with surfaces, and subdivision. So you know, I use sub-D a little bit differently than everyone else. Instead of leaving it as part of the final result, I kind of use it in stages as a way of controlling geometry. You know, the knife tool also is just a great tool. We're just going to just cut some loops in here. Why not? And we tab out of edit mode, and we still have sculpt mode as our main mode that we'll just play with, just pulling shapes until I get something just right. You know, there's like some rules when these things get unwieldy. You know, the first rule is to make it more narrow. At least for me, it's like, yeah, you make it more narrow, get that angular sleekness going on, and then you start working on its form and how things flow together, and you're done. You know, it's a nice, well-received helmet. So, and also the goal of this is to give this a more technical bottom than the top. You know, usually I have detail kind of equilateral and centralized to random places. For this one, I've just been strategizing with having that detail in other places. So right here, I'm just going to hold control to just jump from that point to this point, where you're going to just bevel that to space it out, because if I'm going to get that technical base, I'm going to need a little bit of geo in here. We'll pull this out, and we're cooking right here. We'll just pull this back, grab these two. Let's talk to you in the back office. And as we start to get some angles in here, you know, it starts to become something worth keeping, you know. But I've taken a bit of a hiatus from robots to really just ponder it and ponder what I want to go for going forward, and still got more pondering to do. You know, I always talk about that one Vitali course that was like looking into the sun, but I swear that was the greatest course ever made, at least as far as solving mysteries of, you know, what really goes inside of a robot. You know, it's just a deep question, you know, I think we all must ask ourselves, because I used to just fill it with nonsense, but slowly I'm dissecting what a robot's really made of, you know. So continuing on here, just playing with shapes. We haven't even introduced sub-D, which sub-D will be our kind of geometric auditor control layer, to describe it simply. But the longer we get to play with this, the more freeform we can be with angles without any sort of sub-D turning everything into crease, sub-D turning everything into arcs, you know, is the main thing. You know, anytime someone says, hey, why don't you use sub-D, the first thing that comes to my mind is every sharp angle just being turned into an arc. You know, if I look back on my oldest work, because it comes up as wallpapers, and I do notice that sub-D was, I would say, detrimental to my design at the time. I mean, I probably just need to spend more time with it, as you see me doing nowadays, to you know, get past that rut. But the rules of having your geometry arc is always something. Right here, I'm just going to mark that as a sharp, but we're going to need to make sure in our control tilde that everything's checked here. So yeah, now it's red. Now we're cooking. I don't know. I've been nuking my Blender settings so much lately that things aren't consistent. You know, every time someone's like, hey, I can't install it, and I have to nuke my settings. Thank you for your purchase, is all I could say. However, I do hate eradicating my settings. It's like the curse of an add-on developer. So right here, you always will see me using bevel as like a spacer to just kind of create additional geometry where there is none. So with this area that's isolated, that's going to come key for taking this and also marking it. So using the power of seams, I can use L to select that face area, press Alt S, and push that out, giving me something like this. However, I recognize familiar patterns. You know, it's like deja vu. So we're just going to select that and that dissolve it, because the familiarity is not what I'm going for today. I want to create something interesting, and I want to get all the way through this helmet in one sitting. So quite the challenge. But I'm on the Ngon, which unfortunately is the most reliable PC I have at this time, with the AMD placing slightly behind my TI-83 calculator. So now with this area isolate, we'll just select this, press E, Alt S, push that out, and we'll take this and just kind of finish that thought by just cutting that out, isolate. I know the geometry is just terrible, you know, but you know, when Ngon first came into Blender, I was against it. I was like, this is weird. Why can't we just keep everything permanently tris and quads? But that's actually terrible. Other programs had it good, so you know, I've come to embrace Ngon. Also, you know, this geometry isn't a finished result. You know what you're looking at. Things will become fairly polished, and then they'll become fairly destroyed again. But like I said in my other videos, you know, we Ngon people, we got standards. You know, you just can't just, I mean, you start curving Ngons, you know, you're breaking the rules. And that's where most shading issues come up, is some sort of curvature happening on an Ngon, because it's just, what is that shape, you know? So continuing on, I'm going to just willy-nilly knife time, just cut something like that. We'll select that edge. Because I wasn't in edge mode, it didn't automatically select it. That's just life. And we'll just remove this. And with this piece sticking out right here, this is an opportunity. Sudoku, you know, with geometry. This is a large part of my life, is just playing with geometry, because a quad is not very far away. You know, any Ngon can be solved into an adequate shape. Like this area, you know, what is this? Let's hyper knife. We'll press E to make a new knife cut. And what's the problem? The problem's been offset up here. We put one loop here, select this for this. That's quads. We select this. That's quads. And this is just because I know sub D's coming up, because that's where we start to see what we're actually able to keep from subdivision. And a lot of these sharp angles that I like, you know, I'm probably going to lose for a moment unless I do a little protection and planning to get them in there, which I'm not completely pleased with that. We could take this and slide it down. However, with this piece here, this also presents an opportunity. So let's solve that real quick. We'll press E, break that knife off, finish it over here where it looks like it was meant to go. We'll take the knife and cut a tri loop just here, just so we can take this area here and Alt S push it out. Hopefully the mic isn't messing up my audio. I would be mad if I go through all the work of this video and I lose my audio. So we'll put a loop here, but we don't want it to go all the way to the top. We'll actually add more stress to this area, introducing a pole. And when you see what happens next, you'll realize this geometry just doesn't matter. All I'm thinking about is subdivision control. It doesn't really matter anything with how it's going to go, because it'll be applied and we'll have a different batch of geometry we'll be dealing with. So right here we could solve this one of two ways. We could just turn that into a tri, leave a quad there. So let's go ahead and promote this thing. So first I'll hit it with the S sharp, see what S sharp gives us by marking all the hottest edges in town. You know, these are the edges that a bevel's going to want to visit. And if we were lazy, we could jump this up to C sharp and call it a day. But this level of faceting is just not going to work unless you're doing a PlayStation 1 mod. Right here, I see an opportunity. So let's mark that sharp, unmark that because I was just being lazy. And we'll just knife cut here. Crazy, I know. Shift S, we'll snap the cursor there and select just this face. Press period, set it to 3D cursor, and R, Y, we'll rotate that in. And you're like, what is he doing? All I was trying to do is just get the slope. I liked the way it was transitioning from the front. However, we will need to merge these points, kind of slide this up, slide it back to equalize it. And let's see how we want to do this. Do we want to bring this down and inwards and then slide it back up? And for some reason I'm getting a bunch of pings. Alright, messages on the watch. I'm telling you, every time I'm recording a long tutorial I also get a bunch of communication messages. So that's why it's essential that, you know, we solve bugs on release, because otherwise I'll just be getting distracted in tutorials with it, and all the comments will be, hey, I'm experiencing this bug. Also right here, let's just reevaluate this. So we'll use J lightning bolt, and we'll also J back to it. Actually, let's see how we want to do this. We could slide it this way and then put another point here to reduce the stress, which keeps us here, requiring us to add another point here in order to solve it. But I'm not going to do that. We'll just move this geometry freely in side view. Alright, and it's not looking so bad. People are probably watching this and just exploding out there like robots. But I'm telling you, you apply one level of sub D, every Ngon gets turned into a quad. In fact, every try gets turned into a quad. You could just model one level back and just apply it and, you know, just go on with your life. But that's not a recommended method by me personally. So continuing on, we're just smoothing out this transition. We'll press Control 1, add a level of sub D, and we see what we're getting here. You know, we could actually soften this, just see what we're really getting here. We'll sharpen that back up. So a couple of things. I kind of like letting the visor just be round, so we can get that by unsharpening. To anyone unfamiliar with my workflow, you know, I kind of, when it comes to creasing, I only work with either 1 or 0. The values in between are just not refined enough, in my opinion, or at least in my travels of modeling stuff. So I always crease things either to the max or not at all. And so that's the reason that crease is part of the sharp marking. The sharp and HardOps in the way that we deal with markings is kind of on the fly, you know. Because you have seams, you can do quick selections using L and face mode. And it could also help you with UVing, but really I use it for modeling purposes just for that one benefit. Right here we'll join that, which will help get this surface looking better. If we turn on wireframe, we can see exactly what we're getting. Press Control 1, look at subdiv level 1, and we see that we didn't solve good enough here. However, as we solve it, we can see that now we're cooking. Right here, an extra loop was added in here. Like a lot of these extra superimposed loops are not things I would particularly want in my final model. So that is why I would actually apply this level of sub D and clean it up even more. We'll grab this, just slide that over. Just equalize this geo some. Alright, we'll Alt S push this out. With the power of sub D, we have a little bit of leniency with the way that we handle our surfaces, because once it's applied, it will just kind of give us a slightly smoother result. There used to be a W subdivide in the previous Blender 2.79, which I enjoyed using. And notice that the more things I turn into quads, just the better the solve, the more direct it is. Like right here, I have a couple of choices. Well, for one, I want to unsharp that. I do want to sharpen the rim, but if I want this arc, I'm probably going to need to apply subdiv level 2 in order to get that looking good, which will give me more loops to have to clean up and deal with, but I'll be able to get a more versatile result. But C-sharpen will definitely be impacted by all the additional geo that I'll have to play with, but more than likely we'll be applying level 2 and just going from there. Right here, I'll choose to mark that sharp in order to get that there. However, this shrinkage isn't optimal. So right here, I'll actually mark this sharp in order to make this work, which will cause a little bit of stress in this area. We could Shift E, still on 3D cursor. We could Shift E and reduce it. But really, you know, to me, there's either max or none or max. You know, like these values in between, none of that's acceptable. Only that is acceptable, unfortunately, for the result that we're seeking to obtain. We'll press Alt V and turn wireframe off, because I need to really be able to read this thing just as an object of admiration, not an object of just 3D judgment. With our wireframes, you know, we're just judging it hard, aren't we? So reading the surfaces, as I move the viewport, I can just kind of see the light just roll across, which helps me get a better idea of what's going on. I could round it out, see what this looks like with the filling of a boot. This crease isn't going to help us, so we'll go ahead and just remove that. And just looking at what we have here, making sure everything is working, because if we apply it at this point and we have to make corrections, there's a lot more geo we'll be having to move. So looking at this from the front, you know, right here, we could actually just kind of go off the reservation a little bit. Just really just do what we want, you know. Like I said, this is like a experiment in control. So any geometry that I deal with, I'm always sliding and joining. You know, I'm never just freely moving, because, you know, if you compromise the surface, then you're going to be dealing with lumps, and no one likes lumps. Especially because lumps are kind of hard to solve sometimes. We'll start doing some corrections of joining some geometry across time and space in order to get something more manageable right here. Just quad that out. We just want the area around this to be somewhat manageable later on. For this area, we'll just lightning bolt here, which is why this point in the center even exists, is for us to bank off of later. And what we'll do is grab this all the way to here, and first of all, Control B, which will just give us a little bit of a spacer. With this, we have to make a choice. I choose to bevel. We'll dissolve that loop, which will just make that connection. And then, of course, we have to equalize the area a bit. Sliding only the right things, because we do need a very specific area right there. So, you know, I'm just going to mark this with the seam, just make it easier. So I use markings for everything. I just love markings. Like, if we have the ability to do edge groups, it would expand on our capability so much. You know, if anyone's out there listening, like, I would completely redo every idea with edge groups in mind. So right here, we're just gonna go ahead and crease that, because I don't want those arcs. Like I said, they'll try to give you the arc, and you can choose whether you take it or not. I choose not to take it. You know, if we put sub D on the final model, unless we have a bunch of coiling geometry around the loops to keep them nice and tight and wound up, we'll be dealing with arcs. Right here, an arc actually saves us. That's not bad. Right here, if we finish that connection, that will be something nice to have on the next level starting out. This loop doesn't need any sort of marking, so we'll just remove that. And if we Alt V, look at the wireframe, we see that that is fairly manageable. And that's with a subdiv level of 2 right there. So that's actually one level higher than the one that I used on the ad. However, right here, there is something I'm concerned with, and I don't like the way that transitions. So let's just make sure that we're giving this a nice journey. Because the better that we get this particular phase, the easier it'll be going forward. But any corners that we cut, they'll come back to haunt us. Sorry, I had a bit of a coughing fit there. So right here, we see that subdiv isn't going to be very friendly. So let's just hit it with a crease. That'll calm it down. And right here, we also see that this area could be problematic. So we'll grab these anchors right here, just crease those, which I'm not the biggest fan of having to do. You know, I just feel it's hard on the boy, you know. It's like sending the geometry to bed without dinner. So we'll unmark that one, and we'll just keep an eye on that, see how it does. So apply to mirror, apply sub D. In fact, let's actually go back and we'll duplicate this, move it to a new collection called Junk. It's not Junk, but let's see. I actually just realized the corner of my 3D view shows what group you're in, what collection you're in, which kind of makes it where I don't have to go out of full screen. So now we're back on collection 1, which is our collection. and we'll just go through and apply this. And like I said, this is actually double the geometry that I did for the demo. And an interesting thing about 2.8 now is it used to actually lose all of the creasing information after this step. However, now it appears that it doesn't. So I would use the Sharp Manager to go in and re-promote the loops back to being what I needed them to be. But now I have to go through and manually unmark it, which I'm not complaining about. Just something interesting about 2.8 also while I'm looking at this. There may be loops that are just needing to be gone just because it just adds too much density. Like right here, I'm never going to need those 2 additional loops right here. That could be gone. So call it OCD, but you know, I do like to get in there and clean that sort of stuff up. I'm going to dissolve these 3 loops so that way, actually, let's try that again. I'm going to dissolve those. Alright, let's see. We'll just grab those 2, press C, deselect, and dissolve that. And we're going to press Alt X and bisect mirror it again because we're not yet at the Boolean phase. You know, I'm always trying to dance with the mesh before taking it on to the next phase. So the next level is going to be separations. So we're going to go ahead and separate that. And with this area here, you know, we have so many extra loops. I'm looking at this, it's like, wow, I made a mistake applying subdiv level 2. It's more garbage than I was willing to clean up, but let's get in there and do it. And these loops I'm dissolving, you know, some of them mess with the spacing, but it really doesn't matter compared to the result that we're going for. Like I said, you know, everything's quad right now, so you know, all the people who are leaving me comments about that, you know, what do you guys say now? Well, I guess you got bad things to say still because I'm still in here wrecking it, you know. So we don't care. We're going to just cut a line right here, mark it sharp, and I could be using like machine join or something to get everything to join to this. If you're watching that, I think that could be a thing of like having things join against a sharp as like a form of join cleanup. Just Master Xeon thoughts. Right here, we'll grab this with L. These 2 pieces as well. You know, good old seams, they're there for you. We're just going to separate that and jump back to this. And what do we have left? We have the helmet, and I'm doing a little bit more cut magic than I was planning on for the purposes of this video. You know, just good old classic knife. You know, no need for Boxcutter just yet. You know, it's always good to get a good foundation with the standard tools, so that way you have something to fall back to. Not to mention, the more you dissect the inherent workflows, the better and faster you are, even when using tools. You know, like, you know, my motto, roll with the punches. And the moment something breaks down, I'm rolling with those punches to keep going. We're just joining, solving just a little bit. You know, nothing serious. Just enough. We could press Alt V, turn off wireframe so that way we can see what we have here, what we're dealing with. This loop is probably too hard on the rest of them, and it looks like it could probably go. This loop, as a result of the hard creasing of that loop, I know some of these are kind of critical loops, but someone's got to go. That one, that one can't be it. So I think that is pretty good in terms of getting this to look a little better. We'll take this one and just slide it. We'll grab this. Let's see, right here, will you see deselect 1? What are we sliding? We're sliding some collateral damage. And I just like to slide things in and out to just get things to roll right with the light sometimes. Just a thing I do. We'll dissolve that one. It's not needed. And we're just going to select this. Okay. This is crazy. Alright, we'll select that. Separate it. And we're slowly getting down to less and less pieces. You know. But this is the fun part. Actually, undo. A mistake has been made. There we go. Now we'll separate. We'll just select only this piece. We'll select this and use Control Plus to grow it because I'm not going to press L on all these pieces. These guys are crazy. We'll press P to separate that. And now that there's no more of that in there for us to deal with right now, we can really start simplifying and cutting some nice pieces off. So I'll cut there, mark that. I meant to press Z for cut through. We'll grab this piece and press P to separate it. This area, collateral damage, you know, we had to in order to keep our back looking the way we wanted. And so when it comes to this, we could approach it like this, which is straight lightning bolt. That's the easiest way to get a straight edge there, which is what I would be going for. And we'll just make one of my favorite shapes, which is the lightning bolt. I was about to say something that would have got me demonetized. We'll select this with L, but in vertice mode it just selects the whole manifold geometry piece. And we'll probably do a little more subsequent slicing and dicing as we work our way through this. So yeah, I think this mesh is mostly quad. You know, it's quad enough, you know. It gets my quad of approval. So right here, we'll just knife across, introducing untold Ngons. And we'll just separate that piece off. And this is what we have so far. So I hope you like it. Thank you for watching. No, just kidding. So we're going to select this, press P, separate it. This thing's its own piece now. You know, we'll come back to that later. The bottom also could deal with a separation here, because that was the goal, was to really work on that particular area. In here, we have this loop that's pretty good, so I'm going to play off that loop. And we're just going to rip that, select it with L, P, separate it. We'll use the knife here. And separate this off after ripping it with V. Alright, so far, so good. However, nothing looks amazing yet, you know, nothing's standing out. So with this piece selected, we'll just press Q and T to give it some thickness. However, I do want to press, let's see, we'll press H for help. And we have 1, 2, 3 for adjusting which way it's going to go. So we want this to actually go downward with the third option, I believe. And we'll C sharpen it, which will give us a degree of auditing here. Bevel being our auditor this time instead of subdivision. Sometimes the easier auditor. And we'll delete these faces because they're not needed. However, we will need to apply the mirror and put a modifier mirror instead. So the modifier is the first one. And that way our mirror changes will happen to the other side, but it'll keep the mesh manifold as far as its consideration as far as booleans go. Otherwise, your life will be troublesome. So while we have this nice geo, there's some tricks we could use, right? Like you know, the old classic, just take the geo and twist it and mark it sharp. You know, that's like grabbing it by the nose, Three Stooges style. We'll lower the B width a little bit. Bevel's definitely gonna be giving us a little bit of trouble. I've been doing some other videos just kind of looking at it. It's like you know, the shading's always iffy. Sometimes the shading's just perfect, sometimes it's not, but it's always in a state of improvement. So it could be just one of those things, but you know, I just roll with it. You know, it's not one of those things I focus on when I look at the render. It's like, oh, look at that surface imperfection, it's like 1 pixel big, you know. So right here I'm doing a cut, and it's probably going to be oriented to the surface. Nope, it's oriented to the view, meaning that that's going to work out for me. No, that did not work out. Alright, let's double check this geo here. SX0. And let's actually move the mirror all the way to the top. Alright, so there's a chance that we have some doubles. You know, the bane of all booleans. We merge 5 verts and everything starts looking right again. However, we lost our piece here. So I'm going to need that back. And we want our bevel up top. So let's try that again. Except this time I'm going to use view align. And notice that I haven't saved the file yet. You know, this is one of those Jesus take the wheel situations where we just see how Blender's going to work out for you, you know. Which I do a lot of tests this way. You know, if the file just gets taken, you know, it gets taken. We'll at least solve this a little bit better than the Boolean did, which should help it out a little bit. But the bevel isn't going to go down without a fight today. We'll triple click in order to apply that. And we're going to just take a slice out here, except I got to press backspace because I made a mistake. I wasn't holding control for that precise 30-degree snap. So right here, you can just tell that there's something in there for you to just go and clean up as far as geometry goes. Right here, we're just going to isolate this to mitigate our mistakes to the smallest area possible. And we'll take this, merge it at last. We'll take this and let's slide it just a millimeter. You know, we'll actually C-sharp this to apply it, and then we'll just merge it here instead of dancing with it. And I could see that even though I applied 2 levels of sub D, there still isn't enough geometry for me to be able to manage this area effectively without difficulty. However, you know, I'm always a sporting man, so I'll keep fighting it until it becomes something interesting. So right here, you know, really giving Ngon the business today. Just a little bit of Boxcutter, you know, nothing serious. Go to box. We'll try it again. Oh my god, is my mouse malfunction? Let's try selecting the right piece. Alright, something's going on here. Let's see, is the console saying something? No. So it looks like it's fine. I could just be hallucinating. I've been having some very strange behavior going on with mice lately. And also the AMD. I was previously trying to work on the AMD, and You know what? I probably have to do what we call blowing the mouse, where I have to literally blow the mouse. I mean, in between the buttons. It's a tradition. So we'll draw another one, accidentally activate it, redo. You know, I just don't even feel like doing it right now. I don't even feel like pausing to deal with this mouse. We have to just blend through the pain. You know, I was just talking about rolling with the punches. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Now it's going to phantom click and mess with me, but we'll see how much of this I'll tolerate. We'll join that, take these, join these here. In order to simplify, we'll take this, join it here, take this, join it to last, and right here we'll join this to last. We'll also adding a loop here, J, Alt M, last, and you can see that every time I'm doing that, I'm basically offsetting the loop here and the problem. So let's actually solve it for good. Sometimes I just bounce between going and solving geometry for reasons I just don't understand and fighting with these sort of issues. However, this is my favorite phase because everything that I make a corner or a sharp is always being kept because there's no plans on adding subdivision afterwards. However, I could imagine even if all this geo was corrected and sub D was added, that it would probably have this strange shape that's just smoothed. You look at any of my really old stuff on Sketchfab, I see it all the time. You know, people will favorite something and I'll receive an email about it, and I'll go look at it and I'm like, oh my god, look at this model. Jeez. Subdivision just destroyed it. Yeah, I just remember going through and retopologizing it and just not having my geometry sharp enough in those corners to get it to stay. So right here, I'm just kind of just building a form here with with creases. We'll select this. They're a family now. They don't like it, but they'll learn to love it. So right here, I'm just going to cut and just create a loop like so. We'll quad this and actually offset the tension, and that'll get us just kind of a better shape for us to deal with here. And if we zoom out and look at this, we kind of see what we have going on. And the goal is to actually do this at varying levels throughout the helmet, kind of breaking the rules. God, one moment. All right, I'm not gonna lie. I just blew my mouse. You know, just get it to chill out and let me make it through this video. So don't judge me. You know, hashtag rat gang. So anyways, continuing on, we're just gonna solve some areas like a mystery, just to get something doable. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect, just has to look good at this distance, which is what I'm going for here. So because the mouse is happy, I'm able to draw with Ngon now and not shake and act weird. I'm telling you, this, I'm just about to start a new YouTube channel where all I do is just rant about technology, because technology let me down. You know, I'm a simple man. I just want to model. You know, I'm not like trying to get in a fast car and drive anywhere. I'm just trying to do some CG modeling, you know. We'll just bevel that. It's easier. And we look at this and we can see that there's some wisdom to gain from this. So let's jump here, slingshot back with E. Even though I know that last cut I just did was a little sloppy there. Like over here, there's an extra point created, which probably isn't even needed. However, now we've offset the tension of this area caused by the bevel. You know, as you work with this, you become a little bit more aware of how to control this beast. We'll just slide this over. This geometry's getting a little hostile here. Alright. And that's actually better than what we just had a second ago. Or at least in my head. That's what I'm telling myself. Alright, I'm back now. Mouse is pleased. You know, just want y'all to know. So, we're back to cutting this. And, you know, with Ngon, I like to just freestyle a little bit. It's always so so random, but I like the results that it gives me. Jeez, why didn't anyone tell me I had the wrong selection there? Let's try that again. So what I like about Ngon is just drawing random extrusions and then playing off those to create unique forms. So we'll actually dissolve that loop, which will give us these two loops that should be sharpened, and we'll S-sharp it, make sure everything that should be sharp is sharp. And right here, we could probably use mirror curve to make this curve just right. However, I have a feeling that that's far enough. We'll take this, Control B, bevel it, and at this point, I probably do want to Control S, save, and we'll just call this, what's the last helmet that I did called? Alright, we'll just call this tut bot 01. Never gonna see it again. That's shit you guys not, unless this model's a winner. However, I might do some expanding on this as well, depending on the result that we get. So this one has a lot of loops. We're just going to jump around and just start working some different areas. For this one, I want to apply to solidify, and we'll just grab this and slide that in. And you know, this right here is the equivalent of a school shooting, but for geometry. We'll just dissolve those loops and it's like it never happened. Things looking good there. We'll take this seam in the middle, just play off of that, and we still have a bit of room for play here. In fact, we can undo that on the side. We'll add that back later a different way. I'm going to control click, select all that, and we're going to unmark the sharpness of this and just round that out. And for this piece, we'll push it out as well, using 2 to push it both out and in. One of my favorite ways of using solidify. And this area right here has a lot of tension, so by dissolving some loops, we can restore some purity, which I think looks a lot better. That doesn't look better. Right here, we'll join that, but we'll dissolve that one. For this one, we have a, you know, for the areas that we failed to solve earlier, that's what's creating these like inner divot loops that kind of terminate nowhere. But really all we need is this to just hold its form. So from here, we're just going to go ahead and apply solidify, not even apply to mirror. We're just going to keep the mirror. Every time we apply solidify and keep the mirror, it means that we don't have to cycle this over into being a modifier mirror, because there's always going to be an interior face here at the center. In fact, if we go on this and we turn off merge, now there's a seam there as well, which is just a nice way to create a seam in these circumstances. So we'll select this, control click there. And what I want to do is in where it terminates, geez, what's going on here? You know, we're just going to grab it here, slide it here. We'll end up having it join there, get rid of that termination, get rid of that piece. And then down here, we'll just knife with Z all the way through and dissolve that, which will get this area back under control. So, you know, through these exercises, you do learn quite a bit about topological control. Like, I don't know if anyone else ever experimented with this, but I've also used it for modeling humans and cats especially. You know, I love cats. Not so many dogs. Got to do a dog someday. Alright, take this, slide it over here, and then slide it back. And hopefully the bevel will just hold together, or else we'll have to give it another edge, which in response we have to give that another edge, meaning we have to quad that out and see if we can slide that in. It's just an area of interesting control. So we're going to turn off view align. I'll save the file because I feel a crash coming on. You know, you ever feel it in your knee? It's like, wow, it's going to crash today. But I could be wrong. Let's hope I'm wrong. We'll shift that to live because that did not sync in the way I wanted it to. Alright. And we'll C# that in order to apply it. And it's looking good so far. That one's not so good. And for this, we'll just slide it back and forth in order to kind of equalize that area. And continuing on. So now we're going to take this and actually push it out both ways, so that way we have a little bite to play off of. And we're going to apply to mirror, then apply to solidify, because we don't want any of that madness in the middle. And this thing's meaty. It has a lot of geometry, but we're just going to start off bringing a bevel in right here. And then we can actually start talking about promoting this up to C#. Now our bevel's working out here. So if we C# it, this thing's automatically serious business. So if you haven't caught on by now, the pattern is just going through, cleaning it up, adding thickness, adding sharpness, and that's it. So here we are. Front's looking good so far, at least to me. We'll look at this from the side. And I'm just going to draw an Ngon here, except for some reason I got an extra piece of an Ngon. You know what? I bet my mouse needs me. You know, when the mouse needs you, will you answer the call? If you're a decent person, the answer is no. You know, don't let yourself be held down. You know, who am I kidding? You know, got to give this mouse my time. You know, with all these loops in here, we could play off of them. Like this one, this is a good loop. You know, I would get rid of this loop. But we could also use this loop to create another piece. So actually, let's try that. Let's just use this piece to create a piece. In which case, we only need half of it. But we'll use bisect mirror to split it in half, and then we'll just delete the mirror, so that way we can play with this on the outside and turn it into a cutter of great power. Well, maybe not great power, but moderate power. You know, that's all we can ask for here. Is the solidify gone? Because I feel like I have two different loops here. Let's delete that and completely delete that side. Alright. And we're going to select it to here and just press Control Shift tilde in order to use the mirror helper. You can see down here it's talking about the curve points. I'll use 3. And we'll just course correct here. And now we can just extrude that out and give it some thickness. This is probably like the, you know, we're going to have to correct the normals for that. There's probably a myriad of other ways I could have done this. However, I don't know. I like to try these different techniques over the course of these models. Sometimes they beget entirely new tools. So right here, we got a little bit of sting here. We probably could have done a better job at merging some of these near doubles. So let's see what can be done about that. Let's try merge doubles. Ooh, let's not. We'll take this in local mode, and we'll just talk to it real quick. So first, modifier mirror. Just so half of this is fake, definitely fake, and there's no real half for us to look at in edit mode. We'll just dissolve that. That area has been resolved. Right here, geometry is just too close. We'll just slide that up, grab these pieces, dissolve them. These areas can meet, which means this vert has to be kicked out. This vert also gets kicked out. All these near misses just result in surface imperfections, so it's just easier to just get in there and clean those up. However, I would say that that was a expensive cut, and we didn't give it enough thickness to support that level of bevel. So at this point, this piece is actually good enough for what we need. And we take a look at this one, and it was kind of the same thing. We kind of used geometry that was just a little too close on the inside. You know, the easiest way to deal with this, in my opinion, would be to grab this. We'll invert it, delete everything, and then just put a new solidify on it and just not tell anybody what happened there. That we just had a slice that caused us to go through a whole bunch of work, when really the solution is that easy. And now we have, you know, the geometry we're asking for here, but not the geometry we deserve. You know, we still got to get in here and get rid of some of this rubbish. All right, and let's get back to this, looking at our helmet here. So take the visor into edit mode, and really all we gotta do is just put some thickness on it, and we're done. Not really a lot of additional detail I wanted to do on the visor area. So for this piece, there are some loops that we can get out of here that will make this a little simpler to deal with. So I'm just selecting loops and pressing Control X to dissolve them. Right here, we could actually let this go all the way to the bottom and remove this loop and this loop and slide this loop back and forth. Same with this one, and we start to get control back here. So even letting Ngons be solved into what we're dealing with now, I still find to be quite controllable. Like if Blender ever had a editable mesh modifier added, I would have a field day as far as non-destructive workflows, because I would be able to work on a level of the mesh that would have those changes saved while also keeping a lower base to be able to modify. But you know, such things are easier said than done. So we're just gonna put a loop here. You know, loop wasn't there before, loop's there now. We've basically gentrified this area of the mesh. Solve that. move this over. We can dissolve this and that'll create it all quad flow. We merge all these here, slide, slide, face mode, double quad, slide. You know, it's like a video game of can you solve the geo? And sometimes you can. Sometimes you can throughout the entire model. But I do find in my works that, you know, a combination of both sub-D quad control in addition to using Ngons at the right time is, you know, keys to success, at least in my opinion. So right here, we're just going to use the mirror curve in order to deform what we have here. However, I think we're going to need to apply the solidify in order to really get this under control, because the solidify is also affecting the normals heavily. So with that done, we can now grab this, and I'm actually going to give it 2 points this time because, you know, it's out of chances, and we're just going to place that here, which means we have to get rid of that in order to turn that back into a stiff. Same thing here. We don't even need that there. We can select these 2 points, control shift tilde, we'll give it 2 points. That's enough. We'll select this, we'll give it the old 2-pointer, and that piece is done. And we're starting to get control in this unruly area where we can eventually start to get it where we want it. So for this piece, we're going to need to remove that part, but I'm just going to freely move this edge over, kind of running the gauntlet here, and we're just dissolving some loops that are standing in my way. And now we hit it with the C sharpen, and then lower the B width, of course. And what loop is causing all this? It's that one. Alright, so we'll take this and actually slide this over. And the issue is that this area is marked to be beveled when really it doesn't need it. And this area is just too sharp with too many converging points in order to work out. So let's see if we can quantify it to relax its tension. And that actually caused more tension, so we'll dissolve that. It almost feels like there's a double going on here, so we'll get rid of that loop. And now this thing's free ranging, running all the way up to the top, so we're going to need to circumvent that by shortening its loop span. And you know, this is the best I can explain this sort of stuff. You know, no one talks about this, so the terminology, you just got to kind of make it up. You know, it's like head this geometry off at the pass. We're going to remove that loop and actually dissolve that one. And for this area, we slide this up, we slide it back, and now we can actually let this back into its home. And it's interesting, this shape that we made here, you know, it's definitely going to be a fighter. So what we'll do now is, you know, before that, let's turn on object. Let's just cut a piece, actually not that piece, slice box, almost cut an inset. However, it does remind me that inset's a thing and I should probably fit it into this video. We'll slide that piece over, maybe that way. All right. One good Ngon deserves another, and really, who could call that a good Ngon right there? It's kind of a bad Ngon, but we'll get it back under control. We'll slide this up, And it was actually this piece that needed the TLC. So we'll join this here, and then we'll use E to actually correct this here, which will allow us to take these two faces, requad them, slide this over, and that's our piece now fitting in here. So working on these angles and in these areas can be a little tricky sometimes. However, there are some techniques between, you know, sliding and J lightning bolt to get these surfaces to work together. And I think this is like the nitty-gritty of what Ngon modeling is all about here. So we take a look at what we have here, and we're moving along, just adding details just throughout this thing. And, you know, for this, I'm going to try something crazy. And we'll just cut that right out. C sharp out the gate. You know, that moment that cut works, we need to iron that down, because I can come back and hit this with the reverse clown town, you know, just hit it with the bevel this one as well, just create the indication of some detail here. We'll dissolve that loop, which will let us freely bevel this one here, except we want to just dissolve it and just do what I did there. Alright, so continuing on, the helmet piece up top, let's push it out with the power of 2. However, we want to push it out, but we want to also bring up the modifier and play with the offset. So we want it to be kind of sticking out, but not far. And we'll apply to mirror, and then apply to solidify. Alright, continuing this video, so for this piece, we previously added a solidify on it, and then applied it. So I'll select this loop, control click to jump here, control click to jump here, and we'll just unsharpen that. Pro mode must not be on because I don't have the mode in here. But by giving that a nice round transition, we can look at this, I guess from top view will work. And we're still in Ngon with view align. You know, really giving view align its money's worth today. And we'll just cut directly across. We'll go ahead and mirror that using modifier for both of these pieces. So even though the real piece doesn't have anything on this other side, it'll still mirror it over. However, we do have a few near misses here. So let's just correct this catastrophe. And we'll dissolve that loop, and things are looking fine up here. We have one loop that just shouldn't exist. And things are looking pretty good here. In fact, I'll bring a plane in, R90S, and we'll press Q, T-thick, give us a little bit of thickness, and we'll just cut inside of here. And let's actually take this plane and make it ever so thin. And we'll C-sharp it, which will show us every problem area that we have to deal with here. However, the way that we choose to deal with it is by merging that and that, sliding this way, sliding it this way, and then that way. Sorry, got something in my throat. We'll take this, merge, take this point, select here, and just create a connection. Do the same thing here, except we'll make a connection here and just correct that into a quad, which causes a little bit of tension, but with some correction we are back on track. In fact, bevel's a little bit high. And Bewith works on multiple objects. For some reason, I'm old habit died hard of just selecting a single object. It's just been that way so long. So we can click here and just create a quick knife, and we'll mark that, split it off. This will, maybe it didn't hear me, we'll grab the, okay, I see what's going on here. We can now rip all of this off with V, and we'll separate that into a new mesh. And so let's give this some thickness, and we just have a little bit of mesh just peeking over the sides here. And let's just apply solidify, and we'll run C sharpen, which will bring our auditor bevel into play. Alt M, or J, I believe. J here, J here, and we'll just create a flow here. So the more you do it, easier it gets. But I like to have some sort of edge flow to come back to in the event I do have to start solving things to add additional curvature or whatnot. So we'll take this loop and dissolve it, so that way we could take this and just give it a very hard bevel. Maybe more bevel than it's capable of taking here. But we'll just merge those 2 points. And I think we're getting somewhere with this model, even though we're working as bad as possible. But tuning in, you knew what to expect. So right here, we could either sharpen this, we'll actually just leave it. Just put a notch here. Maybe not. That notch just hurts that surface. Just not enough geo there for us to make that cut work. So we'll actually just let that stay. But that doesn't mean we can't just hit it with a hard cut. And then C sharpen that. And so now we have this piece. So let's give it a little bit of thickness. Surely you've caught on to the pattern by now. And so with this piece, we're just going to immediately jump it over into C sharp, not even look at the modifiers, because after a moment, you just start getting into a groove. I could jump through this thing probably like 15 minutes if I wasn't intentionally working a little bit slower than usual for the purposes of a tutorial. So for this one, we'll just bevel it, and it's going to let us go about that far back. So we'll dissolve some of these trouble loops that are in here. However, we want to click from here to here and use mirror stretch with 2 points to just get things back on track. And we can just get rid of some of these extra loops. And for this area, you can see there's a degree of tension going on with the surface, so we'll just use the knife to get things corrected here. We'll merge this here, slide, slide, dissolve, solve. Notice that the moment you solve it, things start becoming a little bit more clear. Sometimes having vague geo just won't suffice, so solving it for something a little more clear will be helpful. In fact, we control R, we see that we have a flow there in the event that we decide to come back to it. For the helmet in the back, we gave it thickness, and that was it. And I see loops in here that are just too close to critical areas. We'll slide that over. We'll just dissolve just a couple of these loops. However, not here. These are essential to the curvature, so we don't want to mess that up. However, right here, that loop does not assist the curvature, but this one does assist with holding the form, so we just can't slide willy-nilly. Sometimes it's important to see where your selections are ending at, because puts you in some grief if you treat it wrong. So right here, we're just going to select these 2 points, press J. That's going to be our new area, meaning that those pieces have to go. Alright, let's see, this is the trim piece and it has no thickness yet. So we can handle this a couple of ways. One way for me is we'll dissolve to here and we'll dissolve to there so that we can use Alt S to push this in. And then from here we can actually give it one-way thickness using 3. And we will see sharpen, which will put us in harm's way. And of course, because we used a bisect mirror that we never applied, we'll need to go here, delete faces, double click this, turn off sharp, and then let's go ahead and apply that and remirror it using modifier. So it's basically a real mesh that's being mirrored over, not a mesh with a hole in it. So bisect still has a very important place in my workflow. I was previously thinking about having it removed from the mirror just because beginners kept hitting it by accident and it isn't beneficial in cases where you're using booleans, but it is beneficial for modeling in general. But I'm glad that we decided to leave it because it's a silly reason to remove it. Alright. So we look at what we have here so far. Our helmet is looking good-ish, you know, still got a ways to go. So right here, let's say I wanted to bevel this in. I could do it without dissolving this geometry here. Like so. However, in my experience, it's just easier to just get rid of that and then bevel it in order to get a straight. So it's one of those opportunities where sometimes Ngons are more advantageous than having geometry. We'll put a loop here using Control R, and then we'll just connect that via lightning bolt. And so far so good. Our old friend, the troublesome bevel corner, has surfaced once again. So we're just going to select this interior. However, I'm going to box select all of this, ending its career. And we're just going to bevel this with one loop in, and I'm going to press P to adjust the profile. And now that we have a little geo around this, let's see if we can get this to be a little friendlier. And that's probably as friendly as it will get for that particular corner. However, this is the back of the helmet, so I won't obsess with it in this video. I actually obsessed with the same type of corners in previous videos, which just took more time than it was worth. Especially since when we finish, you'll only be looking at the front of this. Here we add C# and we see the bevel just go bananas because it's just too big. But just adjusting the size shows us that we don't even have to destroy much of our mesh here. We could take this, slide it, add a loop here, J lightning bolt here. However, that's not worth it. There's a little bit better because it's not skewing it. And if we put a connection here, we can then use the knife tool to cut here. Alright, and things are so far so good. We'll take this piece, bevel it. However, we left our profile at 0.5. So we want to bring that profile back to 0.5. Well, I guess 0.2 in this case. Strange. Maybe Blender's changed there. Alright. And so continuing on. With this one, we have a flow that'll actually work to our advantage. However, we do have to straighten it out. So we'll use mirror tools to just snap that correct. And get this to start exactly where we need it. We'll take this, Control B, bevel it to push it out, which will let us just dissolve this loop here. Alright, so I'll need to look at this from the side in order to get a good correction on this. Probably dissolving it will do the best, so we'll Alt-M, merge last, merge at last. Alright, things got a little messy there for a moment, but looks like we're about to pull through. Sort of. Really kind of did a number on the geometry around here. Control click. Mirror helper. So the curve stretch can come in handy for a variety of things related to modeling. This is one of the more essential tools. So we'll select these two. Control Shift, mark it 2, and I think I'm going to actually modify the helper to make it where it shows what number it is from the beginning, so you don't have to scroll for it. You know, our war against keystrokes also extends to scrolls as well, and also mice. You know, especially mice as needy as this mouse. You know, watch, I'm gonna come back on my next video, different mouse. So right here, you can just tell when there's a double happening. It just has this look to it, a look like you need to go and deal with that. So right here, we're just going to draw an Ngon. And right here, I actually want to draw a box shape. However, more than likely the surface orientation just will not be right. So for that reason, I will just use Ngon, or I will just use the 3D cursor, and we'll bevel this shape, split it, and hold Shift to keep it live. And let's look at this from the front. In fact, we want to look at this definitely from the most flatmost view of this model, so I use Shift and numpad 7 in order to orient my view to the top of this object. Just a quick and easy way to get in there. And I could tell you right now that you know, we're just going to need to sharp and unsharp and then remove some doubles, and this thing will be fine. Call it a day. However, I do got to warn you that because of the way that beveling works in Boxcutter, in order to bevel specific edges, it has to mark them like so. So that is something that I'm hoping that we do resolve in the future, because it drives me crazy. But when you're working in the weight workflow, that's the only time it should come up. In an angle workflow, they don't care what your markings are. Also, I beveled this way too much for this particular area. So in a way, I've kind of hurt the integrity of it. But we'll get this rotated just right. And bring that in, bring it out. And let's lower the segments down to something like that. Sharpen it. And we'll turn off the cursor just for a moment to see what we have here. And let's get back in this and continue. So what I need to do here is, well, let's try using Ngon as a knife in edit mode. Success. Sometimes we have issues from other systems being fixed that propagate to next system, so I'm always grateful to see a tool working the way it's supposed to. In fact, to celebrate, I'll use some knife, and we'll use a classic HardOps function of the circle E, which if you have loop tools enabled in add-ons, this should just work out for you. And we'll just insert a circle here because, you know, pinpoint accuracy, old habits. And also, the classic circle just works. I like it. However, I'm going to need to Alt-S, push that out a little bit, or else lower the bevel width in order to get it to accommodate. And we look at this from the front, and it's just a little subtle hole, just teeny tiny, you know, not supposed to be anything serious. We'll go back to Ngon because we're just view align Ngoning today. And we'll just cut that piece out there. And you know what a piece needs to make it whole is another cut to just help bring that around. And we take a look at the helmet that we have so far, and we're coming along so good. I mean, so far so good. You know, not trying to toot my own horn. You know, I'll leave it up to you guys if this was a success. We'll put some thickness on this thing as well, and just to escalate it, we'll, geez, you know, let's apply to solidify, and then C-sharp it, and then we'll need to lower the bevel in order to get this to work. So we don't have to do the last step that we did there just now. All right. And we have our outer area pushed out to fit the same thickness. We'll use C-sharp to just call it a day there. And I wonder which part of the geo just went wild. Let's try it again. Let's undo. Obviously mistakes were made here. I probably cut it just too hard and forgot about it. You know, Ngon's like hold the phone, but if you never come back to the call, it defeats the purpose. So I think we left some unanswered calls there. Call center reference. So right here, we'll just fix this area up a little bit, make it presentable, help this area find a woman, you know, make an honest man out of this geometry. So one of these edges has to go, and because that edge went, these are now able to operate straight and with integrity. However, this area has quite a few bad apples. So how will we fix that? We'll put a loop here, slide this over, join here, lightning bolt, and we'll just slide this out. And so far, so good. C-sharp, lower the bevel. Popular pattern. You know, as I work with these tools, I think of all sorts of ideas throughout it. Like, you know, I think this video has kind of shown me that we probably need a smarter B width. I mean, probably not, because the user is the handler. You're supposed to be the guy lowering it, but you know, it'd be cool if we could remember the same parameters last time. Now right here, there's a degree of tension that's just not going to let the bevel work out. So in a way, the bevel is almost a stricter auditor, except I can live with the bevel. I know what I got to do to make the bevel happy. And fortunately, it's less than I have to do for my mouse. So we'll just quad that area out, and we have another area right here. So we'll KZ to cut through, put a loop there, we'll connect it here, and that solves this area by just kind of giving it a little bit of isolation spacing. But this particular area is always going to be causing some surface related issues. So luckily we're not looking at these corners a large amount. However, when I see it, I just can't help but attempt to try to get it to shade better. Also forgot about weighted normal. I forgot to use that throughout this whole model. I could probably get the shade better with that as well, but you know, we're rocking it without it. So we're just sliding this here, and we'll just select all this and just straighten it out. K, Z, right here. We'll cut another one of these in here. you know, probably just slide this all the way in and just say that we've at least mitigated it at this time. We'll slide that up. We'll cut a loop up there. You know, we could probably be doing the same thing to this area, but such advanced cuts is going to require a degree of finesse. Also, you know, this could be an opportunity for me to show you how you subdivision to actually level this piece of geometry up. So let's actually do that. So first thing, we'll need to unbevel this area. So we'll jump into edge mode, grab these two edges, not that. Let's see, Control Shift Tab, vertex, and to make that work, we'll need to remove a couple of edges. So let's grab just this top face. So I'm in face mode, L, you know, it comes in handy. And let's just look at this thing privately, because it almost works, but it doesn't. So let's put a level of sub D on it. And this is where having geometry that's almost passable comes in, because, you know, passable geometry will make this improve to a noticeable degree without as much cleanup. You know, this is a sub D level 2 applied part that I already tried cleaning up manually by dissolving some unneeded loops. However, it appears that I need more geo. So the knife tool just always has that thing where it kind of goes crazy. You know, that's our knife 2019. So we're looking at this with sub D level 1, and I'm just checking the geometry. In fact, we could press Alt V and look at what sub D is about to give us. And I think we can take that and run with it and make that actually work. However, I don't like sacrificing every corner. So let's lock those corners down, and then we'll apply a level of subdivision, and we'll unmark everything and remark just the edges. In case you didn't know, under, let's see, what is it? Select loop, select boundary loop. I have this map to Shift tilde. So anytime I press Shift tilde with a mesh selection, it's just going to select the edge of that. All right. And another thing we could do is maybe attempt a mesh smooth, just a small one. And we only want to actually smooth this geometry. And we can see exactly how smooth we can get it here if we let it. So I'm going to turn off wireframe, and we're going to return this mesh back to where it was and see if you know, additional geo was what this thing needed. And everything's actually solid this time. Usually I delete the interior faces, but since we're using a lot of Boxcutter on this today, that's not going to work. Also, since this mesh is in a C# state, it's not going to show C# in the main menu because I kind of went off the reservation. But really, we can always just reset the mesh in the hops helper. Here we go, hops reset. So now the mesh has been reset, and the options in the Q menu are back to the normal ones that you would get for just a regular mesh. And we C#, and we're back where we were. And I would say that that looks better. Not perfect, but definitely better than what we're dealing with. So in a way, that is what we refer to internally as rebasing. You know, we'll crease a surface out, apply a level of sub D on it, and then from there work on it because it's a little bit more functional. So we gotta slide this loop out the way. Actually, let's not. Let's C# it and then fix it. That way we don't have to compromise any of the form. we'll just slide that. Actually, not like that. It moves on the other side if we move it in object mode. So we'll move it in edit mode. And our helmet is coming together. I know I've been saying that a lot in this video. You know, you gotta believe in yourself, you know. We'll roll the view back just a little bit, and I saw a little bit of something I didn't like in the surface there. So let's see, what can we do about that? Let's isolate this area. So we'll use face mode to isolate it. I'll use Shift tilde to select a boundary. I'll use Control I to flip it, and then we'll add it to a new group. And I just think we are going to have to create a smooth modal where you select a group, it jumps into object mode, it lets you smooth it. It'll be great. Everyone will love it, because how many times am I going to be wanting to do this, guys? Ooh, let's not. How many times am I going to be wanting to do that one? No, let's not do that one at all. So I think that helped with what I saw. Actually, it did not. Alright, just looking at this area right there. You know, it's like, is these battles worth fighting? You know, you got to ask yourself that. Sometimes they're not. However, you know, my best works are the ones where I went through and I fought each of the individual battles, you know, and came to peace with each of the decisions that I made. Because, you know, every cut you're going to have to face for. I mean, especially if you're sending it further down the pipeline, you're going to need to be mindful of what you've done to it. So something is not marked. Oh, we're not on weight. All right. Pardon me. Let's make sure that we are working in a weight workflow in the Control tilde helper. This button will enable the weighted normal, but we don't need it at this time. The weighted normal, I feel that sometimes it makes my experience in this workflow a little bit slower. So I've been just not using it lately to see if that gives me any improvement. In fact, right now I'm on the NUC, which this computer is performing like a dream. And we look at this, and that's just terrible. Let's see why that is. We Shift tilde in order to look inside and see where there's any holes, if there are any present. And so right here down the middle, it highlighted it, so that means there's something going on. Those verts are now applied, so if we grab everything and press Shift tilde, nothing is highlighted, which means that things are now working right. Just a nice way to tell. I mean, the same rules with booleans is the same ones you have to use with 3D printing, so you have to make sure the mesh is manifold, etc. We will mirror this using modifier. We'll mirror this side also using modifier, because from here on out we don't want any more boolean mishaps. We want everything to at least connect on the boolean level, because we already have the issue of dealing with things on a topological level. We'll just move that over and everything's fine. And of course, with this piece, such a good straight line, you just got to bevel that. But something's up here. Alright, we'll just merge that. So I don't know what was going on there, but it was something weird. Unless we want to get pulled into another rabbit hole of fixing, let's not do that. So we'll select this, bring this over, and we see that there's a few doubles here. And a double is just always just so close. You know, I guess that's why they call it a double. Some Boolean humor there. We'll just slide this out and then just J lightning bolt those to connect. And we're making some progress with our helmet here. Just fighting our way all the way around. I'm gonna have to exit Boxcutter in order to get a full selection going here. Sometimes if Boxcutter in edit mode is being weird, it's just best to exit for a moment. Quote Master Xeon 2019. All right, and so far so good. Our goal was to get the detail fairly centralized to this area. Really giving view align its day today. You know, today's official view align day. But we have our helmet almost completed. Trying to keep everything else just you know, fairly minimal, because we'll be accentuating everything with decals at the end of this. Alright, this is not angle. Or that's not, wait, that's angle. Right here, we'll just give some geometry to help this area out. A little bit of sliding should help as well. And not a bad result. The next thing I want to do is we'll just take a cube, scale it up on the Z, and just turn it into some sort of pad. And how do we want to go about taking this through the levels? We can hit it with the bevel, roll about, I would say 3 levels should be enough. And we'll just give it additional geo here. Same for this. We'll just scale that out. Control B, roll the wheel. Excellent. And we can put a level sub D on it, see what we're truly getting here. And the next thing is to use the modifier of array. We'll just roll the wheel. Snap the cursor there. We'll use a grid plane. Let's see, message time. Alright, so send me a message. I'll read it afterwards. Control P, curve deform. And we'll just scale this to fit. And this will be the inside of the helmet. You know, I like to imagine these robots requiring a small degree of cushion around their necks in order for these suits to fit right. Alright, and we'll just scale the curve out on the Y. Alright, and that is actually close enough. And by close enough, I mean it's close enough that, I mean, that's as far as it's going to get with this curve. We'll save the file because I feel a crash coming on. And we'll just hit it with the lattice. The lattice isn't going to work with this because this object's so heavily deformed and rotated that I'm just going to need to orient it back on it myself. Okay, just making sure that it's truly deforming it. So HardOps has a Q menu for lattices. And we'll just give everything 3. Maybe not the Z. Oh, maybe lower it to 2 and make this outside. And looking at this, we're going to need a helper because you adjust this stuff and the menu disappears. That's nutty. So we're going to take this and actually mirror it across the bottom visor, which seems kind of strange, but it does consolidate our work. So we'll press 7 and then 9 to look at the opposite. And we're working on this side. So if we press, I believe, Control 7, all right, and we're just adjusting this to fit nicely. You know, maybe not too nice, but Nice enough. And now we want that Z. So we actually want to raise this to 3 and just grab this and place it. All right. And, you know, we're probably going to need a few more X segments, like something like that. And usually the way I work with lattices is I'll, you know, block it in and then just add more segments slowly in order to, you know, gradually get what I want with it. Because if you have too many spans at once, it'll just require a lot more editing. However, you know, I almost approach lattices like I would if I was sculpting. Let's add this. Let's crank it up to 4, and you can see that the more segments it becomes, the kind of crazier, more insane things gets here. However, I think we are getting it quite close to these edges compared to what I was actually anticipating. I was just going to get it somewhere in the ballpark, but and we'll just move that to the cutters collection. And in here, we actually want to turn off wireframe, which is under general options. We turned it on with bevel previously. So here's our helmet so far. In fact, let's go to layer 4, which is our cutters. Because of auto hide, all our cutters are hidden, so cutters is always a nice quiet layer when I come see it. You know, no complaints when I come to it of cutters being everywhere. You have to press Alt H to see them all if you have auto hide on. All right, just some side adjustments, and now our helmet is looking proper. And the next thing from here, I could keep detailing it, of course. Detailing is the name of the game. I could be tweaking on this thing all day for another hour and 45 minutes, but we want to bevel that, but we want a little bit of give here. So we're going to need to get rid of that, and then we could try it again. And now the bevel flows the way it's supposed to, except for that area. So let's try that again. Dissolve that, and now we have a nice transition between those two sections. So let's jump this thing over to look dev. Let's also save the scene. And we have a random material on this. I'm just going to select everything, delete the material. We'll give it a new material, but assign it because of a glitch in the material helper right now. And now we've all given this a base material. I'll turn on the metallic, lower the color, the shade of black, and the roughness to get something of a nice base. And usually I find something agreeable as the base color, and then from there I'll start getting individual with different aspects of it and breaking apart things via materials. So first, you know, we get our look dev going. For the sake of this video, and because actually we're going to do the visor different. I was going to assign another one of Chip's materials, but actually for this one we're going to need to we'll call it VIS, and we'll make it black and very rough and shiny. And did I mention it was very dark? Alright, and so we have our visor, receiving messages. I can't be complaining about being distracted by a comment of positivity, you know. At least they're not saying I suck. So can't complain. Let's delete this material. We'll create another material. I'm going to call this Chrome. And we're going to just make it gray. Make it metallic. Give it some roughness. I've been wanting to get a add material option added to the Alt-M menu because I think it could come in real handy. We'll give it a little bit of roughness, just something to start breaking things up. Let's see, we have this little piece here. We'll slap it with the chrome. You know, this phase right here is where models get finished. You know, you start breaking up the materials and creating this model of layers, and it really starts to bring everything together, at least in my opinion. You know, I just like to just drop materials on and jump between them until I find a combination that works right for me. But in my experiences, I have found that using shades of black will always lead you on a successful route. With you know, I used to use red and blue. I'd go through all these colors, but my sensei Tony told me to stop doing that because it looks terrible. Some of the best advice I ever received in my life. So I pass it on to you, the viewer. You know, when it comes to colors, just use an accent. You know, one accent, bunch of shades of black, and you'll look at that model. And just when it comes to robot design, I mean, unless you have a specific vision in mind, we're going to call this Met2. You know, these are like toy words for metal. Just so we have some breakup to begin tweaking materials on. Right here, we have something going on that I think is looking fairly good. We'll jump into EVHQ just to make sure. And so in this area, I wanted to do something. So we should probably just go ahead and do that. But before that, let's talk about slicing. So in the video I did yesterday, I was talking about how you can slice with, you could jump between different materials using the M key. So that's what I did there. Was I just, is this thing base? Oh, I'm terrible, you guys. Oh, and I got to apply to mirror. So basic. And now we lower that bevel width, and we're getting somewhere good. And I usually like to leave the back of the heads a little simple, just since they don't get as much play. However, with this one, we did kind of run around the form a bit. So, continuing with our tradition of view alignment, and we're just aligning our view. Eventually in the future, I want to have a tool created that actually will be a Boxcutter object that helps with view alignment, because I see that becoming a emerging need in the future, especially as we make our way through more and more aspects of the robot. So just cutting a few little intelligent notches in here. You know me, if you've watched me for any amount of time, randomness is one of those things that I tend to lean towards. We'll C-sharp that. We'll sharpen that one. And what could be causing this? Okay, there we go. Found it. And there's an X-ray mode in this in render mode. However, you can't use it unless you can't use it with Alt-Z. So it always kind of drove me nuts with this particular mode. And this object is non-destructive, so we can go and take this and have a talk to it in the principal's office, like, hey, this mesh, I saw it outside with the older kids being chrome and the line right there. And is bevel still active on this? Yes. So we could deactivate that a bit. However, I'm not even going to mess with that, but I will be adjusting the scale of this because, let's see. No, it's fine. Just getting a little joiny in some areas, so we just want to slide that back out just to get our control back for that. Right here, we want to definitely slap that one with the chrome. So when it comes to the visor, the main purpose I wanted to do this robot was to just throw a video on the visor. So we'll just look at this from the front, project from view, and let's jump into our shading tab. So with our shading, we'll look at the material here. And let me bring in one of the Boxcutter. Farrell did quite a few ads for the new Boxcutter 7.13 release, and so this video that I'm using is its final video. Dragging it into here, it automatically set it to be movie, and I'm just going to say it's 600 frames, even though that might not be true. And Shift A will bring in a texture coordinate, and we'll use UV. And that didn't help. So let's go over to UV editing, and we see that you know, this thing stood no chance, especially with the mirror not being applied. So you project from view, and we'll just select this, scale it up. Alright, and let's look back at shading, where we were. We let this play, it should. There we go. So cool so far. I do want to position this a little bit differently. And we want to see what we're doing. So we'll put this right in the middle and go back to shading. And for shading, we're going to need to make a few modifications here. So we're going to plug in a color and just grab everything that's not black, which is all this, and use a mix material. And we shall plug this into the emission, make this the second channel, and by plugging this in, we now have emission in the areas where the light is taking place. And this will just give us a much greater effect. We don't have a lot of frames here, so we could expand this to be 600 frames. And I already have a timeline in this scene, so let's go ahead and delete that entire hierarchy so there's nothing in this scene. And this is our helmet so far. You know, time is getting on in this thing. I didn't want to make a all-day tutorial for you guys. I know you guys value your time and probably want to get in and start playing with the tool instead of hearing me rant. So we're just going to set this camera to be 120. Move it over, position it right in the front, and let's get a hot frame going here, like that frame. That frame looks good. So we're just bringing it right in. In fact, we could just Shift S, snap our cursor here, put an empty in here, select this, select the empty, and we'll use the space bar. Track 2 to make a track 2 constraint, and just move this off to the side. so we get a good vantage view. I'm going to select this empty, duplicate it, right click, make it bigger, and let's just clear rotation. And for this one, we're just going to put pound frame times 0.01, so it'll just rotate ever so slowly, maybe even slower than that. I've been making these really slow turntables lately. There we go. So on frame 1, we want to make sure it's already being affected by the driver first, and then we can select that in the camera, parent it, and we have a turntable that's basically rotating around it while focusing on the animation. And so the hard part of this is almost pretty much done. The next thing from here, I would take this, and this, so the two empties in the camera, and we're going to move this to a new collection called Stuff, in memory of the previous Stuff collection that was gone. You know, it'll always be in our memories. And in this collection Stuff, we want to Shift A, plan a cube, but put it at the beginning. And I'm just going to delete this edge, which I'll delete the vertices, and let's give it a material. So I'll just give it one of the materials from the scene. We'll select this back edge, one of the few survivors, and we'll put a bevel on it. And we'll just roll that wheel up because it's a modifier. It doesn't matter how many segments we put on it. We just want it to look good. But we do want to give it a proper material. So we'll remove that material, give it a material called floor. That's my thing now. Now I just misspell materials. It brings me joy for some reason. And we'll just make the floor dark. The darkest of dark. And now that we have this, we can select the floor, select the main empty that's rotating, and now that will be rotating around the scene. So if we enable layer 1, and let's of course select our camera and enable the PP, and we probably want to bring the floor up just a bit because we want it to meet our model. But we can't go too far to meet it. We could go about here, but then it's apparent that we probably should rotate it. So we'll keep it floating just a little bit for the sake of this video. But if we have it play, this is what our result is so far. So we're quite close to the end here. And of course the best part is when you put on the crazy bloom. You know, I think I had this thing at like 3 for the ad. It was just insanity. It was something like that, I believe. However, we'll boost it. We'll put it back at 1. And that also still might be a bit out of control. Let's see, how far does this thing need to go? I love this animation. It's like the logo's just being activated. 300 is probably enough. And let's look at this in a couple of different lighting setups. So there it is in pure darkness. Here it is with a moderate amount of light going on with it. But the power of video textures is just one of those things I was meaning to take advantage of in Eevee, but I just hadn't gotten around to it. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and had a good time as I'm slowly working my way back to getting back into form. So continuing on, we're just going to go back to regular view and just go back to layer 1, and let's get out of render mode. And so for this area, we're gonna have to fill that in with something because it's just a big hole. So you know what I opt for. Taking a plane, giving it thickness. Of course, we're gonna need to see our environment. Everything's just getting put over there. Let's put the cursor back in the center, you know. Bring some stability back to this world of madness. And we'll just array this. Grids and these sort of shapes are like my fallback. Whenever I can't think of anything else to put, you know, fence. rotate it on the Z ever so gently. There we go. Perfect. No one will even notice it's there. So let's select this piece. And this piece was such a troublemaker. Let's P separate an edge out from it. And we'll select this, F to fill it, and we'll give it some thickness. So for this to work, we will need to turn off sort. Sort will not work with this. We'll just turn off sort, do a slash, and just get rid of the outside, excusing that error, which I'll be checking into after this video from our sponsors, me. So continuing on, now we're actually cooking on this thing. You know, I could actually call it a day there, except we're not. You know, it's too easy to just call it a day, you know. So we'll save the file, and we'll get out of Boxcutter, and let's press D to bring up Decalmachine. Of course, being part of the decal gang, I have all the decals. You know, also I'm a decal collector, so if you're selling decals, I will definitely be out there trying to buy them. So let's slap a few decals on here to just really tie this thing together. We'll mirror this to the other side, and this decal will be black because we need to actually perform an update where the mirror gets interjected before the normal, but that's okay. In lieu of all the other work that we've had to do on this today, moving a modifier is the least of our worries. However, we do want to push this off just a little bit. I'll do that in edit mode, and we'll just slap a few decals just to really tie this model together and make it something worthy to show mom, you know. Like, hey mom, look at this model. Be like, that's good. Now go brush your teeth. So, and I'm kind of just reusing the same one here. Another very popular way I use decals, just slapping them on as a final touch. You know, everywhere they go, that area just looks 10 to 50% cooler. Also, Mr. Rad Tools, love his decals. He's got some gems in here, like this one, which we'll just plop right here. And we'll just take that and set it off the surface just a little bit. And also mirror it across, which will give it blackness. So we'll just move the mirror. And someday we'll be getting that taken care of, maybe in the next update. Alright, and of course Sir Charles cannot be forgotten. Sir Charles did a ton of inserts recently that are just amazing. I mean, I gotta give him his props on this, which I've mentioned this in the last couple of videos. If anyone's interested in picking up his kit, I'm a big fan of it and do plan to use it to get my money's worth over time. But every time I use it, I think I get my money's worth. So with this one, we want to make it metallic and play with the roughness. And we'll bring in another one, this time from the Classic Corp collection. God, that was a tongue twister. And we'll just blend this with Classic Corp right here. So obscuring the video just slightly. Hopefully this does not turn out to be regrettable. And we will just adjust that. Make it metallic. Make it very shiny. Are we sure that that is shiny? Alright, and let's see what else we can do here. There's a couple of other decals that I just you know, this decal is obligatory. I have to use it every time. I just love holes. You know, holes is such a pain to create. You know, people always ask about a way to use booleans to create these sort of patterns, and while it's definitely possible if you exert a small degree of control, the alternative is not doing it, which I'm also a big fan of. Especially if it works out. If the decals are working out, then I'm all for it. And also, you know, can't be losing them between files and computers, you know. These are the things that keep me up at night. We're going to select this back piece and give it a slightly different material. And I believe we're almost done. We could bring in a couple of more decals here. Slap a latch here. And I'm hoping that the audio of this is not messed up, because I would just move on to the next tutorial topic and forget about my dreams of doing a you know, a robot free or a robot sculpt free tutorial, basically, to you know, nothing against sculpting. I just wanted to approach it polygonally, just to kind of show how I get down and play with these things, and show some of the problems that I face and how I work through them, fight them until I lose patience and then give up on them, and how in the end, you know, as long as the result justifies the means, I can live with that. You know, sometimes I'm just too zoomed in on the model and too obsessive, but fixing those things pays off in the long run, because the result speaks for itself. It's like, hey, this is a guy who went through a struggle to make this model, and because of that, respect. So let's actually turn stuff off, and I'm going to move all the decals to collection. It's just how I live, sorry. And so we have collection 1, we have collection 2, and if we let this play, this is what we have so far. And I'll turn on the zoom. I'll turn on the bloom, not the zoom. Speaking of the zoom, to end this video on a good note, also, geez, I'm screwing up, guys. I need to take these grates and put those great grates on the other side, because that's how great they are. So now back to where I was. All right, so now I think we have a pretty nice result for the model that we were going for here. Of course, the decals are very fine, final touch. I cannot stress how much I love using Decalmachine. It saved me so many keystrokes. But I'll assume everyone out here is already using it, so I don't need to sing the praises. Alright, so to wrap up, let's see, I put the last decal on layer 5, so let's actually bring that over here and get this projected correctly. This one's always a classic. Let's try that again. Alright, and that one's been placed, and we'll mirror that to the other side. Of course, reordering the mirror. And so we look at layer 1, we have our helmet. We look at layer 2, we have our environment. For the environment, we'll lower the roughness a little bit just to isolate the helmet. And so just to conclude this, we'll let this video play out. And I thank you all for watching. I apologize for taking so long over the course of this video, 2 hours just to make a helmet, but I hope it was worth it. And with that, I'll see you guys next time.